The man known to history as Julius Robert Oppenheimer was born on April 22, 1904, in New York City. His German-Jewish parents were Julius Oppenheimer, a rich textile importer, and Ella, née Friedman, a painter. Both were immigrants. After graduating from Harvard University, Oppenheimer sailed to England and enrolled at the University of Cambridge, where he began his atomic research at the Cavendish Laboratory in 1925. Oppenheimer experienced bouts of depression throughout his life, telling his brother Frank, "It is occasionally true that I need physics more than friends." Oppenheimer was miserable at Cambridge and found laboratory work uninteresting, preferring theoretical physics rather than experimental. According to American Prometheus, The Triumph and Tragedy of J. Robert Oppenheimer by Kai Bird and Martin J. Sherwin. Oppenheimer had such a poor relationship with his Cambridge tutor, Patrick Blackett, that at one point Oppenheimer left an apple doused with noxious chemicals on Blackett's desk. In 1926, he teamed with Max Born at Göttingen University, where he met a host of prominent physicists, including Niels Bohr. He received his doctorate at Göttingen while also developing what became known as the Born-Oppenheimer approximation, an important contribution to quantum molecular theory. Oppenheimer held teaching positions at the University of California, Berkeley, and the California Institute of Technology, and did important research in such fields as theoretical astronomy, nuclear physics, quantum electrodynamics, and more, according to a biographical encyclopedia of scientists and inventors in American film and TV since 1930 by A. Bowden Van Riper. Oppenheimer became politically active in the 1930s and agreed with Albert Einstein and Leo Szilard that the Nazis could develop a nuclear weapon. Following the 1939 invasion of Poland by Nazi Germany, Oppenheimer was selected to administer a laboratory to carry out the Manhattan Project, a U.S. Army experiment aimed at harnessing atomic energy for military purposes. The choice of Oppenheimer surprised some due to his left-wing politics, lack of leadership experience, and the fact he had never won a Nobel Prize. However, Brigadier General Leslie R. Groves, Jr., the director of the Manhattan Project, felt Oppenheimer had an overweening ambition that would serve him well in the position, according to Life and Times of the Atomic Bomb by Albert Berger. Oppenheimer led the scientific end of the Manhattan Project in Los Alamos, New Mexico, beginning in 1942. The project, which grew from a few hundred people to more than 6,000 by 1945, was populated by many scientists who had escaped fascist regimes in Europe, according to American Prometheus. Their mission was to explore a newly documented fission process involving uranium-235, with which they hoped to make a nuclear bomb before Adolf Hitler could develop one. The project was initially allotted $6,000 by the U.S. government, but by the time the work culminated in 1945, the budget had grown to $2 billion. The work of Oppenheimer and his fellow scientists led to the world's first nuclear explosion in the Jornada del Muerto desert in New Mexico, on July 16, 1945. The detonation was given the codename Trinity, inspired by a poem by John Donne. While witnessing the explosion, Oppenheimer recalled a verse from the Bhagavad Gita that read, "If the radiance of 1,000 suns were to burst at once into the sky, that would be like the splendor of the Mighty One," according to the book Brighter Than 1,000 Suns, A Personal History of the Atomic Scientists by Robert Young. More famously, he later said he also reflected upon another Bhagavad Gita verse, "I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." Oppenheimer was initially pleased with the atomic bomb, with physicist Isidore Rabi saying of him, "I'll never forget his walk. I'll never forget the way he stepped out of the car. His walk was like high noon. This kind of strut." He had done it, according to Robert Oppenheimer, A Life Inside the Center by Ray Monk. But Oppenheimer's feelings of elation following Trinity and the bombing of Hiroshima 3 weeks later changed after the bombing of Nagasaki, which he found unnecessary from a military perspective. During a White House meeting with Harry S. Truman, Oppenheimer famously claimed to have blood on his hands, a comment that infuriated the president. Although the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings effectively ended World War II, the weapons' devastation prompted Oppenheimer to argue against its further development, and he resigned from his post that same year. Ultimately, his work for the Manhattan Project earned him the enduring nickname, "Father of the Atomic Bomb." The Manhattan Project was top secret until after the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, when Oppenheimer became a household name. He returned to the California Institute of Technology but found he had little desire to teach anymore. He went on to become chairman of the General Advisory Committee of the Atomic Energy Commission, AEC. The Soviet Union's first atomic bomb test in 1949 came earlier than Americans had expected, increasing pressure for the United States to develop the more powerful hydrogen bomb. But Oppenheimer opposed this for practical and ethnical reasons, according to American Prometheus. Truman, however, decided to press forward with the weapons development anyway. Oppenheimer's shocking opposition to the bomb led to accusations that he was a communist supporter. In 1954, the AEC held a security hearing regarding Oppenheimer, during which he was suspended from secret nuclear research and stripped of his security clearance. This served as a personal and professional humiliation for Oppenheimer, effectively ending his role in government and policy. However, his reputation was partially rehabilitated in 1963, when President John F. Kennedy announced Oppenheimer would receive the Enrico Fermi Award, according to J. Robert Oppenheimer and the American Century by David Cassidy. After Kennedy's assassination, President Lyndon B. Johnson presented the award to Oppenheimer that December. Oppenheimer continued to support international control of atomic energy in his later years. In 1939, Oppenheimer met Catherine "Kitty" Puning, a Berkeley student who also had communist ties. The two married in 1940, and they had 2 children: Peter, who was born in 1941, and Catherine "Tony," who was born in 1944. Working as a biologist and botanist, Kitty became an alcoholic after her husband became a celebrity for his role in the Manhattan Project, according to American Prometheus. Kitty died of an embolism in 1972, years after Oppenheimer's own death. A chain smoker, Oppenheimer died of throat cancer on February 18, 1967, in Princeton, New Jersey. In December 2022, 55 years after Oppenheimer's death, U.S. Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm nullified the 1954 decision to revoke his national security clearance.